So do you think the headline attention shifting from what's happening over there to domestic issues is because of the importance of the domestic issues, or because you are making progress that isn't necessarily headline grabbing as it was in 2007, 2008?
Well, headlines aren't always great because I think understandably, this is one of these deals that people are always asking, does it ever frustrate you that good news doesn't get reported? Well, look, if it blows up, if it kills people, this is very significant, and that crowds out that day's ribbon cutting, and that is just reality. And we have long since accepted what gets a headline and what doesn't, and Fox has succumbed to that long since, as have all of the other cable news and all the news channels. So, again, we're not in it for the headlines. We're not in it for the stock options. We're not in it for any of the rest of that. We're in it just to accomplish a mission that's very important to our country. And that's, at the end of the day, why I think our young men and women continue to raise their right hand and re-enlist. I'll show a final slide today. Usually we'll wrap up with a picture of 1,215 soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines. 1,215 re-enlisted in one ceremony on the 4th of July in 2008 in Baghdad. It was just extraordinary. And it was before the economic downturn. It was, this wasn't just because the economy was tough. It was because they know that they're engaged in something very important to our country. They feel privileged to do it with the individuals who are on the right and left. And that's why they do it again and again. So, okay, yes.
General, you mentioned that the Central Command is responsible for a piece of geography, but you're facing an adversary that is essentially franchised outside of your area of responsibility into Europe, Africa, Southeast Asia.
Yes.
Is the geographic combatant command structure appropriate and adequate to deal with a stateless enemy like Al-Qaeda?
It is. And what we have to do, though, is work across boundaries, and we do that constantly. And in fact, of course, that's where the interagency process comes in. That's where, the Joint Special Operations Command, which is the military organization that is our standing counterterrorist joint task force, which to be sure is about commanders in our area about 80–90% of the time, but still definitely has focus elsewhere. We do global secure video teleconferences, and it may be that I co-host it with the Special Operations Command commander, Joint Special Operations Command commander, occasionally a director of CIA or someone else. But we will have all of the other combatant commands that are engaged in this: AFRICOM, EUCOM, PACOM, sometimes, again, those in the homeland, and we'll have FBI, CIA, DIA, NSA, NGA, and, all of the intelligence agencies, the Joint Staff, Office of Secretary of Defense, counterterrorist senior advisor to the President, John Brennan, and others. So again, it does have to be pulled together. I will tell you an area, though, where that's even more challenging, and that is in cyberspace. One of the items I did in my opening statement refer to in the testimony last week was indeed the need, we think, to have approval of what Secretary Gates proposed, which is a cyber command. You've got to be very careful about First Amendment rights, to be sure. But again, cyberspace is where the enemy recruits, trains, proselytizes, shares tactics, techniques, and procedures, and coordinates activities. And so we have to, I think, that's an area where we're going to have to develop it. Again, wouldn't say an entirely new paradigm, because it's not as if there are not elements seized with that, but I think to elevate certain structures and then to determine the operating processes, if you will, the business practices, to use the term.
When President Obama campaigned here in New Hampshire, he mentioned repeatedly wanting to withdraw combat troops from Iraq. It was one of his priorities when he took office. Have there been conversations about that,
Oh, sure, yeah. One of the very first processes we had, actually, when he took office was to launch an Iraq policy review, and at the same time also the Afghan policy review, Afghanistan-Pakistan policy review as well. And in fact, that was announced within about, I think, certainly within 90 and maybe within 60 days of his taking office. And we provided, again, what, there's a term called best professional military advice. And, we we're not trying to anticipate what will play well in Capitol Hill or, you know, what someone else might want to hear at all. And he wants us to provide military advice, not try to, you know, he can do the politics and the economics and everything else. And we did that, and in fact, he modified a bit, I think. We thought he had a very pragmatic approach, and that the policy that he announced was again very appropriate and something that we very strongly supported. And indeed, we're on that. We have been marching along on this. We came out of the cities last July. We have transitioned steadily tasks to Iraqi security forces. There's nearly 700,000 of them now, and we are steadily coming down now. And now we're about to start to go down a fairly steep ramp, if you will, towards that 50,000 figure by the end of August. We think it's doable, and of course we're also ramping up in Afghanistan quite substantially as well, and this obviously enables that to a certain degree. What it really enables is the greater dwell time for our troopers when they're back home, so that we weren't in the boat we were in 2007 when we had the surge in Iraq, and we ended up having troopers who were deployed for 12 or even 15 months in the surge brigades and came home and had less than a year before or a year or so before deploying again. Now it's stretching out to, say, 18 months and even longer in some cases, although there are certainly still some of what we call high demand, low density units that are still deploying on a bit more rapid pace than that.
And I guess the other question is, in regards to envisioning success in the future, when the surge was first implemented, did you envision or could you envision the level of success that's been achieved? And can you envision right now the continuation of it and perhaps a democratic force within that region 25
well,
years?
we talk about democracy in Iraq, and I mean, this is Iraqracy. This is Iraq's form of democracy, and that's what it will continue to be. It will evolve. Obviously, what we are all hopeful is that we will see an Iraq in which the government is representative of a very broad spectrum of the people. We think that if you do the math, that you generally have to have cross-sectarian and cross-ethnic, i.e. Kurd as well as Arab, Sunni as well as Shia, and other minority, Turkmen, Christian, Yazidi, Shabak, and so forth, as part of the governing coalition. It will certainly be Shia-led, without question. I mean, it is a Shia majority country, and that is a given. But we hope that will be broadly representative of the population and broadly responsive to the population, which is generally what this government has been, by the way. Again, it has had, innumerable cases of high political drama, but, as we reflect on other democratic experiences in various places, some perhaps even in recent days, I mean, there's been a little bit of high political drama in some of